Some of these layer 2 projects are the most hotly anticipated crypto projects in the next bull market that could outperform the rest of the crypto market significantly. In this video, I'm going to tell you about 5 layer 2 crypto projects that all offer something different and are definitely something you should be paying attention to if you want to make money in crypto. Hit that like button and let's get into today's video. Now, I know that this channel is watched by all from the hyper experienced crypto investors to the mere beginners. And it's for everyone. So we're going to start off by explaining a little bit of a problem with a layer 1. First of all, you're like, what on earth is a layer 1? Layer 1, something like Ethereum, Solana, are both examples of blockchains. Different dApps or decentralized applications can be built upon these blockchains, and the blockchain, depending on its own constraints, will fulfill certain processes. Now, each of these layer 1 blockchains hopes to be the very best by solving the blockchain trilemma, which consists of 3 things: security, speed, and decentralization. It's an age-old thing, or at least as old as crypto, where it's very difficult for something to be hyper-secure because it often then lets itself down with things like speed. For example, Ethereum, good security, but not so quick. And then you look at something like Solana, which is extremely quick, but then lacks a little perhaps in terms of its decentralization, and some will say security. Therefore, we need something called a layer 2, which is a protocol that's built on top of the layer 1 that takes transactions away from the blockchain in order to process different transactions and make up for the shortfalls of the layer 1 while still utilizing the strengths of the layer 1. So for example, Ethereum has a good deal of security. A layer 2 may be brought in to speed up the processes that are going through Ethereum while still maintaining that security. Now, the first one, which probably won't shock you, I'm going to talk about is a Polygon. Polygon, we saw a huge surge in activity during the last bull market and was one of the most successful launches in general. Polygon, as a layer 2 for Ethereum, identifies the issue within Ethereum: high gas fees and speed. It's ultra fast with ultra cheap processing fees and is starting to make big moves in the GameFi industry. This obviously is a coin that perhaps people aren't paying too much attention to because it's last year's stock, but actually potentially it could be very, very exciting given where it's heading. It's also starting to look into the ZK or zero knowledge arena, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. I don't want to spoil the final project I'm going to talk about. Currently, the price of Polygon sits around 51 cents. So let's have a quick look at where Polygon has been in the past and anticipate where potentially it might go in the future. Bearing in mind that there is now a more competitive environment, more things coming in all the time, but then you weigh that up against the fact that there are more people coming into the ecosystem. So it's very difficult to anticipate really where these projects will go, but looking at previous price action is a good indication of the potential future pricing, at least for these projects. If we look into the market cap of Polygon at all-time highs, you can see that it went up to around $17-18 billion. And at that point, the price of Polygon sat all the way up at about 5x or just beyond 5x from where we are currently. I do think that there is a good chance of being able to push towards sort of a 10x because it's still highly ranked, it still sits in a lot of watch lists, and still lots of people paying attention to this project. Basically works by providing side chains to Ethereum's main chain, taking the stress away from Ethereum. This allows it to operate much more efficiently and more quickly. However, it is more centralized than the Ethereum mainnet and perhaps less secure. So does it really come in and solve the problem that it's supposed to be doing as a layer 2 built on Ethereum? Not really, in my opinion. Website itself, hyper detailed. Go and check it out, guys. Loads more information to be available here, but I want to kind of crash through a few of these different projects to here today in order to kind of get the juices flowing during this dry, boring crypto market. On to the next one, which is one of the most successful or biggest launches of this year, and that is Arbitrum, which is an optimistic roll-up. And you're like, what does that mean? Okay, so if we think about Ethereum having a bunch of different transactions that are happening all the time, Arbitrum effectively rolls up all of those transactions into kind of one big bundle of transactions and then kind of passes them through much more quickly. Okay, so the more simple and easy transactions it can process really quickly as bulk rather than having to go through the individual analysis of each of these different transactions. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, and it does this off chain. It seamlessly fits into what Ethereum is doing, sitting well with scalability as well as decentralization, which has been obviously key elements of Ethereum and what Ethereum was trying to achieve in the very first place. That said, it's still very early on in terms of its development, and many people are anticipating that perhaps Arbitrum will struggle with scalability going into the future, but we'll obviously have to wait and see with what's going on. Something else that is a little bit of a cause for concern, bearing in mind, if we look to the all-time high market cap, you can see that Arbitrum sat around $2.2 billion slightly earlier on this year, currently with a market cap of around $1 billion. That makes it very difficult to see astronomical price movements, in my opinion, from Arbitrum. Now, as we come down below, something else that is a little bit of a cause for concern, perhaps, is that the circulating supply currently sits at 1.27 billion, with the maximum circulating supply being 10 billion. This means that maybe it's around 15% of the circulating supply has already been released, and many people are anticipating that over a period of time, this kind of new tokens and everything flooding onto the market is going to be a bad thing for Arbitrum. But in my opinion, it's more of a kind of a longer term bet that sees a good opportunity. And since we've already been down 93% on all-time highs that we saw earlier on this year, there is a good bit of ground to be making up, potential to be moving towards a 10 to $20 billion market cap in a good market condition, so potentially a 10 to a 20x if things go nicely for Arbitrum. Now, Optimism, in a similar way to Arbitrum, is an optimistic rollup, again, rolling up those transactions in order to speed up processes and things like that. It also minimizes gas fees. Instead of just having one transaction for one set of gas fees like you would normally have in Ethereum, it rolls up a big batch of these and then pushes them all through at once. So for example, if the gas fee for one transaction was $10 and you had 10 rolled into one, you could then separate the gas fee into a $1 per transaction. It's a very simplified way of how it works, but hopefully that makes things clear. And if you're not so sure about crypto and you're new to crypto, hopefully this is something that we'll start to understand. But I recommend going and learning more about layer 2s, because layer 2s, I think, are going to play a very big part in the next crypto bull run once the whole kind of space goes crazy. And you're seeing that already take place because a lot of big money is starting to invest more heavily into layer 2 ecosystems. Optimism benefits from using Ethereum's security and has the potential to offer some extremely high throughput. However, much like Arbitrum, is still in very early stages and potentially may not be able to deal with those transactions should it come to it in the future. A lot of things you'll see in crypto are the potential that a project or something has for the future rather than a guarantee that it's going to be happening right now. A lot of the things with investing are investing in the future, or at least a promise of the future. So you then need to go and look at the team, understand how many projects the team has delivered before, have they been successful, are they able to deliver a team of such complexity? These are all things you should be looking at as a avid crypto investor. On to the next one, which is ZK Sync, which uses ZK or zero knowledge snarks to proof different transactions. Now you're like, okay, starting to get a little bit more punchy right now. Okay, luckily for you, I am also non-technical, so I should hopefully be able to describe it to you in layman's terms in a way that you can understand, because this is how someone explained it to me. Imagine you're at school and you really want to prove to your friend that you know the answer to this maths question that's really complicated, because you want to be really cool and be able to answer it. Now, you don't want to tell your friend the answer to this question, but what you want to do is prove that you know the answer without showing that you've got to give him the answer, or her the answer, whatever, okay? So what you're effectively going to do is provide a zero knowledge rollup that shows that you have the ability to solve that maths problem, and you have solved the maths problem without showing them the actual maths problem. Now you're like, wow, that's a bit confusing. Well, again, much like other Ethereum layer 2s, it works by rolling up, making things smaller and more simple, but because it doesn't actually have to push all that transactional detail across, one, it's obviously far more secure because it doesn't actually have to pass all that information across, and because it's rolling it all up, it's also much cheaper, much more affordable, and as well, can also maintain its decentralization. And you're like, well, hold on a minute. Doesn't that solve the blockchain trilemma that we talked about earlier on? Well, if you've ever heard of a guy called Vitalik Buterin, who is the founder of Ethereum, he'll tell you that ZK and zero knowledge could well be the holy grail of blockchain crypto technology. And what does that mean for us? Well, ZK Sync is still a new token, is likely to be launching later on into this year. And you can see that much like other ZK areas, they stand for trustlessness, security, resilience, forkability, and community ownership. There's so many different ways and things that this could be used, but it does also come with its problems. is quite complex, as you can probably understand, and it's quite complex for developers to be able to develop on things like this, which is obviously a problem. Less developers means it's going to be less used, or less widely used, at least initially, unless there's other ways it means it can be developed in the future to make it more simple. Now on to the final one, and lots of people may find this to be a little bit of a weird one, bearing in mind that it had an extremely positive and strong last bull market, but it's sort of starting to show signs of weakness in this bull market, which is why I like to get into these weak projects. I say this bull market, I mean before this next bull market starts, and in my opinion, I think we're very, very close. Now Loopring is focusing on high throughput for order book trading. What does that mean? Well, since we're all moving towards decentralized exchanges after the collapse of FTX and questions around whether or not we like Binance, basically it's really important that you have solid ecosystems that these decentralized exchanges are running on in order to ensure high-speed transactions, so that you're not waiting around for your transactions to go through, and high liquidity. That means that if I want to sell something, that there's always someone on the other side to be able to take that order. Or on the other side of things, if I want to buy something, there's always crypto on the other side so I can take it. So for example, the exchange or DEX doesn't run out of liquidity. This is a very important thing, particularly when we move into a bull market and the transactional volume becomes seriously high, because if you lack that volume, you will see what are called liquidity spikes, which are really pretty dangerous, because you can suddenly see the spike in the price rally up even like a 10x or dump towards the downside to pretty much zero. And this can absolutely destroy people who've got stop losses and things in place, because it can basically liquidate people through having a lack of liquidity. Now Loopring was basically Ethereum's first ever ZK rollup layer 2, which obviously we know the ZK thing, we know that this is pretty exciting, but Loopring does suffer from a few different issues in that despite being around from the last bull market, it still suffers a bit from whether or not it's fully decentralized, or at least decentralized to the point at which we should be interested in it. And also its adoption is still quite limited, which you probably would have hoped for a bit more adoption by now, considering kind of the age of the project and where it's been going. However, let's get back to coin market cap. As we look down below, you can see the circulating supply is very, very high, okay, which is a very positive thing. And you can see that going back through all-time highs before, we had a spike in the price all the way up to around $4.5 billion. So the current market cap sits all the way down here at like $233 million, okay? So there is a massive bit of growth back to all-time highs potentially in Loopring. And if we see the market developing and more implementation coming in for Loopring, I think that this could be a bit of a hidden gem that maybe has already seen a nice bit of an accumulation phase after this big pump towards the upside. Look at how this volatile spike came out of nowhere as well. That's something else I want to be in the play for, because potentially things could get good. Now, unfortunately, guys, I'm not sponsored by any of those projects I've talked about today, so those are fully impartial opinions. Go away and do your own research. I really recommend finding out more about layer 2s. But I am in fact delighted to say that today's video is sponsored by Magpie.xyz. Now, you may be aware, if you've been involved in crypto for a while, that there are a bunch of Ethereum-based tokens and Binance tokens and God knows what. And it can be really, really painful and really expensive to try and change money from one coin into another, because cross-chain exchanges haven't really existed, or at least haven't been very good until now, and you've had to use things like bridging. However, that's all about to change right now, because Magpie Fi allows you to change a cross-chain extremely easily. And how does it do that? Well, instead of bridging the actual tokens, what it actually does is bridge the transactions, which is extremely smart and extremely cool. And this means that you can trade between different chains like Avalanche, like Binance Smart Chain, like Ethereum and Polygon, all super quickly, very securely, and it's also extremely easy to use. And currently the public beta is live. You can go through to the link down below in the description to find out more detail, as well as use this service for swapping. You can see, you just come down through and click swap now. And you can see that very simply at the top, you have your network chain here, Ethereum, USDT, and you can drop down and select whatever chain it is that you want. And then down below, you can go and change the coin or the blockchain that you want to do the transaction through. This is very, very cool, because you may have seen things like it, but I guarantee nothing as cheap and as fast and effective as Magpie. You can see Magpie is currently being followed by over 170,000 people on Twitter, and due to the unique way in which it bridges the transactions, it's able to process transactions pretty much instantaneously. The team has a very strong background in trading and crypto development in general, and they're backed by some of the biggest names in crypto venture capital, For example, here we've got Jump. Currently, the Magpie beta has 7 different chains which are available here, ranging from Ethereum down to Polygon, ZK, EVM, and all of the coins that we talked about here today you can interact with over on Magpie Fi. If you want to find out more details, guys, go through the link down below in the description. There are tons more in terms of documentation and information here. And if you want and you're into deep diving, you can come and find out more about the team here. You can see all very transparent with all their Twitters, LinkedIn's, and all that good stuff. You can see here from the fact that they're hiring that this is a project that is growing extremely fast and is definitely something you want to pay attention to if you're interested in crypto. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, do me a favor, hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, you want to learn more about cryptocurrency, subscribe. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.